Hello everyone, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. This is part 2 of looking at Hake brushes. This one was bought from Hobby Lobby today. It is 4 inches wide. It was $11, but it was half off, so that was $5.50. I'm going to use the back of a sheet of Stonehenge Aqua. We're going to go into painting it. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of hair all over this paper. So, first look, see what we can do. Just kind of pull out any loose hairs. Holy cow. This is shedding an insane amount. Let's see. We're about 50 seconds into this video, and let's see if there's any more that'll come off. Big old tuft right there. And I'm honestly not, I don't know what that was. There's been some dogs in the neighborhood that have been kind of walking around, and the house that I rent is raised. So sometimes they've been underneath the house, so I don't know if that's what that noise was. Anyway. This is like petting a shedding cat or dog. I'm going to pull this all together so you can see how much came off of that. There you go. That's how much had come off so far. I'm going to pause the camera to take off some more. All right, and we did get some more off very quickly. I do recall hearing that people might put glue along the, I believe it's called the ferrule, right in there to help hold the hairs in on Hake brushes. But I think it would just be better to do what I did. Now, this awkward and unwieldy one, I think you would have to have essentially a bucket or something to get it wet, to get it started. I'm just going to hold my water and apply in that fashion. I usually use the large Ranson Hake brush while I'm applying my water. This one is twice the size. I will say, for ease of application of water, this is definitely hands down winning. I had mentioned that I have some Hake brushes dedicated to applying sizing and different mediums and chemicals to paper. Something this large would be great, as long as it's not shedding. All right. Let's make some room for this water over here. And we'll see how it goes. So I'll try to crop this video so you can see the pan and the paint that we're pulling up. Let's grab some ultramarine blue. Obviously, this is very unwieldy, and it would probably be suited more towards a full sheet or a half sheet of paper, meaning this is a 11 by 15. If we did a half sheet, it would be the full sheet's 22 by 30. We could go 22 by 15, and this would probably be great for that size. Usually if I get hairs with my other brush, I can push against it and lift it up. But I am splattering water everywhere. If you were working from pans, it'd be virtually impossible to use this brush. This is some raw sienna. Let me flatten my paper. Get some more water on there. Something I don't usually do, but I feel like we need it. I'm going to probably gear this to the style of Stephen Cronin. Very influential painter for me. And he paints with the Hake brush. And he was one of the reasons I got into the Hake brush and this style. I feel like he uses a lot more Payne's gray in the initial stage. So I think that's what I'll do there. Let me pause while I put out some more pigments. Okay. I will say this, while I was putting out the Payne's gray, I was thinking that palette management, palette location would be very important if you were to go ahead and paint with a brush this large. For the ability to pull the pigment up and to prevent it from cross-contaminating with the paint around it. I think we'll call this one painting with an absurdly large Hake brush. There's some experiments that I want to do to the Hake brushes themselves. I'm curious how solvents and chemicals might help age these brushes and stiffen the hairs. I'm going to go very Cronin-esque with this Payne's gray over that raw sienna. And try to grab some ultramarine blue, put it in there as well. Let's pull down a little bit of reflections back here. And let's grab a card. Let's scrape in his style. There we go. When I first started out, I had taken this Best Buy credit card and cut it into different shapes and different sizes for scraping. There's that one corner that I always like, the rounded corner, but I feel a little frazzled today. I feel like everything's all over the place and not wanting to be found. Okay. So let's pause this one. Let's dry it off. All right, we're relatively dry and we had a softening take place. I do want to point out the texture that is left behind by the water drying around the hairs. I've seen that before with other things. I've seen that with cat hair. Hammy is a long-haired cat, so his long hair kind of gets all over the place. Let's grab some ultramarine blue and light red oxide. We're going to mix a dark purple. I do have a lot of water on the brush, so with a Hake brush, you can pull water out of it around the base. That's one way to do that. I don't have a sharp chiseled edge, but we'll see what we can do. So here is my far distant land. So far, pretty flat and boring if I just go in that same vertical width all the way, so I'm going to add some variation amongst it. I can scrape in or out back there. In fact, I think for the rest of this video, I'll try to refer to or reflect upon things that I remember Stephen Cronin doing, that he would scrape back there and put little buildings in a horizon. And then we can bring the side in here, which I recall him doing, as well as David Usher. Around the same time, I was watching a lot of David Usher, and he would do these kind of cove shapes. Right here is still a little wet. Even drew some dry brush texture. Play around with that. The sky is going to stay its initial stage. I'm not going to play around there. When you think about it, so the super large Hake brush is great for loading different colors. Right now I have one area that has more light red oxide on it, one area that has more ultramarine, and one that has some Payne's gray. Let's do some vertical marks in the foreground. Try to get a variation of texture. In fact, let's grab some burnt umber. It's pretty good at pulling pigment up, as you can hopefully see. I'll even try to grab raw sienna. I haven't used raw sienna in a long time. I may even go on lemon yellow. What we'll do is we'll grab some lemon yellow in our browns. We'll create that overgrowth effect between us and the water. Now, normally I would go with the Hake, the rigger, and the card, and that's what Cronin and others would do. But we'll try to stick within just the Hake and the card. Moving to the rigger, I think, would pull too much from the exploration of this large Hake. I should make this video picture like a, what do they call it, clickbait, where it just be a picture of me like just making a wow face, just holding this big brush in front of my face, just saying, painting with a super large brush. Yeah. I think it was Jose on the Ron Ranson page who recently challenged himself to do an entire painting with just the Hake brush, and the textures that he achieved were absolutely beautiful. Let's grab some more Payne's gray. We're going to look for nuanced textures now. Let's see what's capable of. Unfortunately, I'm not going to add, I want to add a tree, but I don't want to add a tree. Maybe we should in this one, just so we can explore that possibility. Let's see how thin of a line I can get. Somebody recently had posted a Hake brush that they had picked up from Cheap Joe's, Ron Ranson Hake brush. And it's came to my memory a moment ago. I had looked at one of my other Hake brushes where it had separated in the middle and it created two areas. We think it might have been a manufacturing issue and people that were looking at it. All right, so chiseled edge, this is what we're getting, not much. I'm gonna run my finger between it, kind of like a hairdresser, bringing things to a point. A lot of the pigments, especially in the student grade lines, aren't dangerous. So there's not much to worry about. One thing that I do recall reading is that the phthalo, I think if it's aerated, like if you were to use a spray gun, has some dangerous aspects to it. But I think a lot of things at that point, if you're aerating it and spraying it, is dangerous. Okay, so we can get a pretty thin tree trunk. In fact, this is the way I used to paint tree trunks. You get nice texture with them. I did move on to just using the number 4 rigger for tree trunks as just an easy way to get them in. Let's see foliage. So foliage, we're going to use a stippling approach. When I would watch Stephen Cronin, he would often layer his foliage and his tree trunks, and I think that's where I had picked that up, was from him, where we might put this in, dry it off, and then put another layer. It gives a surprisingly nice uniform foliage effect without seeming like a stamping pattern. Meaning this guy has the crazy shape. It might have that crazy shape over and over again. This is just nice and spread out. Let's grab some raw sienna. I wonder if this doesn't hold as much water as the other brands. Some vertical strokes there. Okay, I'm gonna have to wet my raw sienna. So the initial wetting of the brush, where I had shown it on camera and having to kind of dig in side to side, now I could just dip in a corner and I have more than enough water to bring over onto my palette. Let's see if we have to pull water out. I think light red oxide would be interesting in these trees too. Then we'll do a dry off. Okay, time for a pause. A few thoughts came to mind while doing the dry off. Because of the size, I'm not pulling globs of pigment, so I'm not getting super deep, super dark, super opaque marks. So I'm going to have a kind of a lighter overall feel to it. I personally like pushing as dark as I can. I prefer the tonalist painting. I prefer more opaque watercolor, not to the point of gouache, though gouache is fun. But for my layer that I put over the dry, you can see how much that softens as well. So you might be able to use that effect to your benefit by creating layer after layer, slowly building up and creating a density within it, or using a Hake brush in this fashion and then eventually switching towards the end to a number 4 rigger, like I said, and then when you could get more pigment out, or maybe even switching to a smaller Hake brush. But this does force a lot more of a loose approach just by simply having a larger brush. I can't get in and put the small details in. You could eventually get to the point where, see, just grabbing that edge and just creating thin lines. This is more raw, light red oxide. Almost wanted to flip over and scrape at the back of the handle. It may be worthwhile to carefully sharpen that to a point to scrape with. Be careful if you have a brush that you wind up making the end pointy. For example, let's see. Here's the back of a rigger. That's not that pointy, but we can get some lines with it. Or you could just have the card in your hand. So I will say this, you are welcome to follow along with anything that I paint. If you do, I'd love to see your results. You have my express permission to sign your name to anything you do whenever you follow anything I paint. And you have my express permission to sell anything you do if you follow anything that I paint. This is where you have to be careful. We had so much water and pigment, we started getting the kind of globs. If you would like to support this channel, I have a whole bunch of links below. I started a that membership forum on YouTube as well, so look out for posts there. I put public posts because I would love you all to interact, even if you're not like supporting in other aspects, because ultimately I just want to have fun. If there's ever anything you want to see, let me know. Now, let's try it off and we'll talk about this brush. Okay, so it's drying off. We'll sign it and I'll put my thoughts together now about this. For $11, okay, so that's how much it is before any sales or anything like that. For $11, I would buy this brush for applying water if I didn't have a big brush for that, or like I had said, applying chemicals for my alternative processes. I think it would be okay for that. For $11, I don't think I would buy it for solely painting purposes, but that's just kind of where I'm at money-wise with paint. I would probably just buy a Ranson Hake brush. I think that's about the price of those. For it being half off, I think it does have a lot of value and use. You can see that you can get the very soft, fast and loose sky with this brush. We can get a large amount of textures from it, and if you're looking to loosen up a large brush like this, there's nothing else you can do but loosen up. You have to learn the water control of it, or you start getting those blobs in that fashion. So it's a good way to learn those things. I feel, and I did put the restriction on myself of not using a rigger or a different brush with it. I had talked about the pigment load. I did get some good darks within that. So for painting by itself, I'm pretty pleased with that there. The different textures that we achieved, that and the card. The shedding was obviously a huge issue, but one day I have to take advantage of the shedding aspect and just go for the whole thing having that interesting texture throughout when it dries around it. And maybe saving those brush hairs. Who knows? Overall, if you're looking to get into the Hake, if you got one of these for $5.50, I'd say go for it to play around. Being prepared of all those. Of course, you have to have something huge to pull your paint off of, and palette management becomes very crucial because of the mixing. I do have this other one that I had picked up, which we will wind up using for another video. This was 1.5. I want to say there was a smaller one, this one, another, and then here. And I wanted a large difference to try out the different two. This one may be fun. We'll see how that works out in another video. But right off the bat, I'm just thinking that initial wash of water, this guy would just be so great for that. Just an easy reach and do that. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. If there's anything that I missed in regards to the Hake brush, let me know. I'll continue going through this process and creating more videos in that regard. Y'all take care and have a great day.